Hi, I'm Angela, a fashion designer and online instructor, and in this episode, we're talking about the wrap dress again, but this time, let's talk about the different types of wraps. So for this one here, it has two belts. It goes into the side seam right here. I'm gonna show you how to sew that seam. And then in this one here, this one's even easier, but a little different. The tie goes into the side seam right here, and this one goes into the front. But to keep it all closed, now I made this very exaggerated so you can see this, but I just used twill tape in 3 different areas. Why 3? Well, later on in the season when we talk about fit a little bit more, you'll know, but this will keep this whole section tight against your body instead of just at the waist where this would gap open. So I just connected it to the side seams and here. Now I use twill tape, but you could use self fabric, which would be a little bit more polished. All right, so let's take a look. Again, I'm using the basic pattern, the same thing where this is the right side and the left side. Very simple to do. We already finished the neckline in the last episode, so let's talk a little bit about the belt. Here is a self fabric piece instead of using twill tape. All I did was cut a piece of bias and turn it right side out. Pretty easy. So here is the pattern that we were working on. And I've pinned one side shut, just so you can see it a little bit better. All right, so this is the side. If we're going to have a belt that goes through, I call it the keyhole. This is where we're gonna need it. And I've marked it here on the front piece. If you can see these chalk marks. I also gave myself little slashes. So use the markings on your pattern, and then if you're shorter waisted or longer waisted, you can move those up or down, but this will give you a guide. And this width needs to be the same width as your belt, so it fits through nicely. If you're using a very thin belt, then you might only just want a little hole. So I'm just gonna pin this together so when we go to the sewing machine, you'll see. So this will be for the side where we're gonna add a belt. Now, on version number 2 back there, the blue one, what we did is on this side, we had a belt that went into this side seam. So I'm doing 2 dresses in one, so don't get confused here. So on this side, this would be if you're inserting a belt like the blue dress. Here I have the belts cut. I made a couple short, a couple long. I want to point out a couple things on here. I'm using contrasting threads so you can see this. But notice when I stitch these corners, I start at this end, stitch all the way down, and this end, and go across this way. The reason being is that my angling will go here, and I've got a lot of stitches right here, so I know that won't come out. So before I flip it to the right side, all I do is trim this, like this, and flip it. Now you could use a pin, but I have this little tool that I just slide this in, and this will turn the belt. I go right to the tip. I get my hands a little wet. This is a slippery rayon. This is really slippery if you're using a silk charmeuse or something like that. And it goes to the right side, and then I will just give that a good pressing, and that will be my belt. So here is one that's finished already. So for the blue dress behind me, it has 2 belts that are this width. And one of them is gonna go into this side seam. So I'm doing one side for one dress and one side for the other just to show you how this works. So this belt is gonna wanna face towards the outside. So I'm gonna remove these pins. And again, from the inside of the garment, I think I have this chalk marked for you. I sure do, right here. So this belt is going to go on the right side, and then my front to my back on the side seam. Of course, depending on what pattern you're using for this, the directions would be there for you as well, but I thought a visual might help you. And then let's go to the sewing machine and show you how this works. All right, so the first side, this is the one like the red dress where we're making a hole in the side. And I'm gonna just bring this down. My seam allowances are 1/2 inch. I'm stitching down the side seam. And when I get to the area that I have chalk marked, this is what I kind of talked you through before, but you didn't get to see it. Back stitch, change the stitch to a basting stitch. Go to the next mark, and then go back to your 3.0 or 2.5, whatever you're stitching, and stitch down. I'm just gonna stop there. These are just little samples to show you how it's going. I'm gonna go to the pressing and press this seam open. A little steam. And a little bit more. A little steam, use the tailor's clapper to make that crease. All right, see how nice that stays open? Now, I know where the basting marks are because I have my chalk marks here as a guide. So they're right there, but I'm not gonna open that yet. The reason being is the next thing I wanna do, I'm just gonna mark this from the right side of the fabric. So I'm putting a pin. So I know on the right side, that's one part of the belt. When I flip this over, you'll see it a little bit better. And there's the other. So this is the opening where my belt is gonna go. You could use chalk to do that too, but since my chalk's over there, I'm gonna use a pin. All right, now, depending on what machine you have, you could just stitch around and do a square. But this has a cool feature on it where I can stitch different directions. So I'm gonna stitch forward. And I'm gonna start right where that is here. Put this on this side so I can remember where it is. Start stitching down. Don't stitch through pins, that's not a good idea. Okay, and now I'm gonna go to the left. This is a great technique if you're doing bags, by the way, but we're working on dresses, so we can find a use here too. Then stitch back. And then go to the right. And then just do a little lock stitch. Oops, cut this. And then I will go in and open these stitches. But see, there's my square. I actually would use a seam ripper, but since I have scissors right here, I'm just gonna pull out one of these threads. There you go. Pull out your basting thread, and now you have, this is where your belt will go through. Pretty cool, huh? All right, now let's go to the other side. This one, we're stitching, I'm gonna go back just to a straight stitch. Stitching down. And then this would be for the blue version. And by the way, whatever pattern you're using, this pattern actually has both versions, but if you're using one that doesn't, I just showed you how to do this. You can change it up a little bit, do your own pattern hacking. All right, I'm just gonna stitch to there and give it a pressing, and we'll go see what this looks like. This time, I'm just gonna press it, the seam to the back. All right, let's see how this turned out. For the version with the keyhole, you can now see this in the side seam, and this is where your belt will fit through. Very easy to do. On this side here, this one had a belt attached to the side. Now what's that gonna attach to? The next part that you would need to do then is to take, let's see if I've got another bigger belt here. If not, I'll just grab a piece of fabric. I'll just grab this fabric. You have two of these belts. On this side, you're gonna attach it right here to the center front. Right here, which would be right here on your pattern. This same belt would be attached here. And how I do this, now this belt isn't finished, but I think you'll get the idea. I'm just gonna pin this in place. Like this. So this is going to be stitched to the right side of the fabric. So I'll flip this around, stitch like this, and then it will flip to the back. And what that does is it gives you already the little fold to start your hem. So let me fold this back out. Oh, there's my finished belt. I knew it was here. It's starting to look like my studio at home. All right, so this is attached here. This is attached here, and that will tie. This is like the blue one. One more step that we didn't do yet. and that is this piece. Now you saw in the other top where I had 3 straps. The reason I did that is because you can make it fit right under the bust, at the waist, and through the waist area really nicely. So here's this. All you do is you take this and you sew it right into the seam. Now this one obviously was for dress number 1, but this would just be sewn into the seam. Tie this around and you're good to go. So those are 2 different ways to close your wrap dress. Pick your favorite and alter your own pattern if you want. Either have it all tied to the side through the hole or across here. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about a little bit more jazzing up this dress.